This brief tutorial will cover the basics of the ADA, or Americans with Disabilities Act. We will look at the evolution of attitudes and policies towards students with disabilities, a few key vocabulary terms to be aware of, and some best practices for instructional designers and others who are developing instructional media. According to the Disabilities in Education Act of 1990, inclusiveness means the following. To the maximum extent appropriate, children with disabilities, including children in public or private institutions or other care facilities, are educated with children who are non-disabled. Special classes, separate schooling, or other removal of children with disabilities from the regular educational environment occur only when the nature or severity of the disability is such that education in regular classes with the use of supplementary aids and services cannot be achieved satisfactorily. And finally, the educational placement of each child with a disability is as close as possible to the child's home. Before we move on, let's review a few important vocabulary terms. Impairment involves an abnormality or loss of function in a physical, anatomical, or psychological structure. When an impairment limits an individual from performing an activity, such as communicating with others, hearing, movement, manipulating objects, and so on, in a manner normally expected for human beings, we refer to this as a disability. A handicap arises when an individual is unable to fulfill a role due to a disability. An IEP is an individual educational plan. Universal Design for Learning is an educational framework based on research in the learning sciences that guides the development of flexible learning environments that can accommodate individual learning differences. Web accessibility refers to the inclusive practice of removing barriers that prevent interaction with or access to websites by people with disabilities. The United States Access Board website covers all of the required accommodations regarding access to technology. For the purpose of this tutorial, we will look at several issues most pertinent to instructional designers. This tutorial will cover some of the best practices that most closely impact instructional design and instructional technologies, specifically web-based information and applications and multimedia, including images and videos. First, a text alternative should be made for every non-text component, such as images, using the alt text feature or something similar. Every multimedia presentation, such as a video or slideshow, should have an equivalent, such as a transcript and/or voice recording, in order to make that content available to all. Regarding the use of color, any information that is conveyed via the use of color should also be conveyed in another format, such as text. When electronic forms are designed to be completed online, the form shall allow people using assistive technology to access the information, the field elements, and functionality required for completion and submission of the form, including all directions and cues. When animation is displayed, the information shall be displayable in at least one non-animated presentation mode at the option of the user. All training and informational video and multimedia productions, regardless of format, that contain speech or audio information shall be either open or closed captions. Furthermore, they should also be audio described. Finally, when a timed response is required by the learner, the user shall be alerted and given sufficient time to indicate more time is required. And here is a list of resources.